Hey guys, welcome back to another great episode of Talkin' Star Wars here from the Brick City Blockade Star Wars Podcast Network. This is Robin Vogt, one of the people, Mr. Scott Inch, you'll be hearing soon in our Thrawn review. But on this special episode of Talkin' Star Wars, sitting across from me is Miss Amy Wishman Nalan. Amy, thank you so much for coming on to Talkin' Star Wars.
Thank you so much for having me, Robin.
Yeah, it's I was just saying to Amy ahead of time, it's so great when we get people from our Twitter community and everybody from the Star Wars community come on. We can put a voice finally with a face, and it's always a great conversation. Amy, what was it that got you into Star Wars? Everybody's got their own little kind of story.
Well, I, like many kids that were born in the 80s, I can't really tell you the first time that I saw Star Wars in some kind of earth-shattering moment. What I do remember was in our living room with the gold shag carpet, my mom saying, "I think you'll like this," and popping it into the VCR. And the scene that I remember seeing and making the biggest impression on me was in A New Hope when Luke is out looking for R2 after he's run away, and he's looking through his I'm not going to remember the right Star Wars word, but his binoculars, and he sees the bantha off in the distance, and then the Tusken Raider comes up and screams at him and tries to attack him. That scene scared the ever living daylight out of me as a kid. And I remember that very clearly. And I remember I have a younger brother. We watched it together. We loved it. We watched Empire, and we watched Return of the Jedi, and that was a huge part of our childhood, was watching those movies. My brother liked to act out the scenes and stuff. I didn't get quite as into that, but that's what got me hooked on Star Wars a long time ago in this galaxy.
Yeah, and that's one of the best parts about this universe is that we kind of all have our way of being introduced to this universe far away. And it's really cool that you had that great experience. Obviously, can I just say the gold shaggy carpet? I mean, that's probably one of the best statements somebody has made here on the show. So kudos to you that you lived in that room with that carpet.
That's right. That's right. I was, like I said, a child of the 80s.
So the beauty of Star Wars is not only does it start in the cinematic way, but also, Amy, we know you are a novels person. You like the books, you like to read them, you like to talk about them. I have to admit, there are a lot of great Star Wars books out there. But what was one for you that you still look back on today, or maybe it's a recent one? I don't know, but is there one specifically that you really is like you just kind of go back to each time, and you're like, wow, this was a great experience reading this?
Well, I was an extremely late bloomer when it came to the books. I did not, my first Star Wars book was Lost Stars.
Mm.
And of course, that book was incredible. I read it in a day. I was not the best mom that day, I'll be honest, but once I started, I had to finish it. And then after that, I kind of started devouring more. And this was more on like the new canon eventually. And now that I'm not completely current, I haven't read everything in the new canon, but I'm also dipping my toe into Legends as well. The books that have made the most impact on me in the new canon, I would say, are the Aftermath trilogy. I really loved those books a lot.
Yeah, and people have their say, of course, with poor Chuck Wendig there. He's taken his fair shots on that first book. But I have to say, Life Debt and specifically the last one, Empire's End, did such a good job of wrapping up that trilogy. And I have to admit, I don't know how you feel about this, Amy, but I think Empire's End was such a nice way. If you go back then and you watch Force Awakens, there is a lot of connective tissue there.
Yeah, it's so funny because a lot of people, I felt like the general fan reaction, was not that great for Aftermath. More people liked left Life Debt and then, came on board for Empire's End. And there's a lot of stuff in Empire's End that contributes to like how you view Jakku, how you view the Snoke, or the possibility of Snoke, or the remnants of the Empire and the origins of the First Order. But I think the interesting thing is you couldn't have Empire's End without Aftermath. They all built on each other so nicely.
That's exactly the purpose of a trilogy of books, is it just kind of moves its way up and it continues to propel the story forward. And like you said, these novels do a great job, and I have to admit, I totally agree. that Aftermath trilogy did such a nice job of moving it forward. And for Star Wars fans, doing what it had to do, giving us more content to discuss. Now, Amy, I know there's so many different Star Wars characters out there that we could probably choose from, but if you were to choose one character that you could be in the Star Wars universe, it's a tough question. Which one would you be and why?
Which one would I aspire to be, or which one am I most like? Because those are two different
Oh,
answers.
let's go with which one you're most like. I like that. I like this little.
Okay. Well, truthfully, I'm probably most like C3PO. I wrote a piece for Unmistakably Star Wars about the ways I kind of find myself in C3PO, and whether it be my knowledge that I have that I like to share that isn't always completely useful or helpful to the situation, or whether I get frustrated and overwhelmed easily and maybe I take it out on people closest to me like I shouldn't. Those are the ways I kind of C3PO reminds me of myself. I also tend to be a little bit of a worrier, or can be an obsessive thinker about things. So I think I like C3PO because I identify with him in that way. And I feel like the inspiring thing for C3PO is he may not be the funnest person to be around. He's, not R2 and BB-8 that everybody loves, but he will be your friend, and he'll be afraid, but he'll do his best anyway.
That's such a good description of what C3PO really is. And one of the best things I have to say, and this is probably the next lead off here, is that Star Wars Celebration, I love the Anthony Daniels panel. Anytime he gets on stage and he talks with the fans, it is always a riot, and especially with Warwick Davis this year, and having Alan Tudyk up there as well. That was such a great moment. If you were to really specifically choose probably one of your favorite moments of Star Wars Celebration this year, what would it be and why?
Well, we were lucky enough to go to Celebration this year. I went with my 8-year-old daughter. We won 4-day passes from Stephen Stanton. And so we were lucky enough to experience that. It was our first celebration. And so my, my favorite moment as, Emily's mom was just seeing Celebration through her eyes, and her seeing the number of people that were there. She kind of looks at me with deer in the headlights on the first day, and it's like, I didn't know this many people love Star Wars. I didn't know there were this many people like me. And knowing that we were making those memories together, and that we're going to be able to always reminisce on that time. I would love to make it to another celebration, but even if we don't, we had that time together, and it was so special. But for me personally, I'm a big Rebels fan, and I'm a Zeb. Zeb is my favorite character on Rebels, and I love Callus a lot also. And so in the Rebels panel, when Steve Bloom mentioned Hot Callus and mentioned the Zeb and Callus going off and starting a family on Lyrasan, excuse me, I about lost it. I was actually squirming in my seat, I think.
That must have been such a great experience live, being in the crowd, seeing Steve Blum overall is such a cool guy. And when he came out, he was like, Carabas. I was just like, you know what, Steve, we're all going to go home now because you just
Yes.
did for us. Such a great moment.
He's a great guy. You can tell, like, it seems like the whole Rebels crew, they're a family on the show, but they're a family in real life too. And that dynamic came off so much in the panel, just the way they were interacting with each other on stage. And you could tell they were happy to be there. It was a really great panel.
Now, somebody who was there, Amy, I know from people here who were celebrating Star Wars Celebration at home, when that announcement came from Dave Filoni that season 4 was going to be the last season, we saw the emotions from Tia Sakar. We saw some of the emotions from some of the other people, like Freddie Prinze Jr., of course. What was that like being there when an announcement came? Because all I could hear in the background on our end was, "Aww." So, was that what it
Yeah.
was like?
Yes. I think, like, on the one hand, it wasn't shocking news. You knew they were cutting close in the timeline up to A New Hope. And so, like, the intellectual part of my brain was not surprised. The emotional side of me, like, the whole audience was just, like you said, oh, and then I'm not too proud to admit I started to cry. I
Yeah.
just started to bawl because that show has found its way into my heart. And I was just so sad that this is going to be the last season. So I get that they're like ending the arc and that it's going to end the way they want it to end. And in Filoni, I trust. In Star Wars, we trust. Like you guys
Mhm.
say, I trust them to do the right thing. But just selfishly, I'm just so sad that that show is going to be done.
Yeah, it was very emotional for a lot of us. I mean, just as Star Wars fans, we have become so attached to these characters. And of course, Ahsoka now, and of course, Grand Admiral Thrawn coming into the picture as legends. You want to talk about an introduction to a character in a series, and now it's ending. Very emotional for a lot of us.
Yes.
So, specifically, one thing we didn't get at Celebration, which I think we may see in the near future if you guys have been listening to our podcast episodes, is the possibility of another anthology film beyond Han Solo and beyond some of these possible spin-offs. Obviously, Star Wars is extending itself into 2030 and hopefully beyond, I would imagine. So Amy, if you were to see somebody's story played out in an anthology film, is there a specific character that you would like to see that Star Wars kind of adapts to and then tells that story going forward?
You know, it's so interesting. I don't always know. I have so many characters that I'm interested in. And one thing that you find reading the books, the literature, that if it's done well, you know, like Chuck Wendig introduced the Aftermath crew and Sinjir Rathvelis that was
Mm.
introduced in Aftermath. I love that character. I'm fully invested in that character. I don't think we'll ever see a movie about Sinjir, but if they did and they did it right, like I would be all about that. I would love to see the Siege of Mandalore with Ahsoka. I would love to see how that played out between Clone Wars and Rebels and how she and Darth Maul met. I, like everybody else in the universe, wants an Obi-Wan standalone film. uh, I think I trust them to do whatever. I trust them to do the right thing, and we've got enough quantity of Star Wars coming out right now that if they choose to tell a story that is not up my alley or is not for me, that's okay because it's going to be someone else's absolute favorite thing. Like a Boba Fett movie, I'm not like, oh, yes, give me Boba Fett, but I would still go see it and I might love it and I might not. And either way, it's fine because there's enough Star Wars for all of us. We don't have to love every single thing that comes out.
So very true. There's just so much stuff that they could dig into when it comes to the Star Wars canon. One of the things that you brought up earlier was Lost Stars. Boy, would I like to see that played out cinematically or even in
Oh,
a series of some kind.
yes, I almost feel like to do the sweeping nature of that story justice, it would have to be like a mini series.
Yeah.
A 2-hour movie just wouldn't cut it because Claudia Gray did such an amazing job developing those characters so that you could feel and identify so fully with both Sienna and Thane that I just feel like a 2-hour movie wouldn't be enough. I need like a 16-hour miniseries that does every page of the book justice.
Absolutely. There'd be just so much development. I think there would be a lot there for us as Star Wars fans and members of the community that we could just talk about. I mean, if they did a Lost Stars animated series or even like a Lost Stars, like you said, a 16-part series or something through Netflix, man, I think we would indulge in that every single time we can.
Absolutely.
So, Amy, where can people find out what you're doing across the universe and really some of the things I know that you've been working on doing some pieces for Unmistakably Star Wars and stuff like the C3PO article. Where can people find out maybe something that you're maybe working on at some point?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at Amy Wishman. That's my main social media presence, and that's the best way to get in touch with me. I also, in addition to writing for Unmistakably Star Wars occasionally, I also am a guest contributor to Future of the Force.
Very nice. Good guys over there at Unmistakably and Future of the Force. Now, Amy, it's one of the things we do here on the podcast network all the time. You listen to the podcast network. I think you might know what this is at the end of the show. It's a little thing we like to call.
Would that be plug time?
That would be plug time. I think you already kind of said it, but you might as well say it to the good people again. Where can the good people find you across social media?
I can be found opinionating and pontificating on and Fangirl Flailing on Twitter at Amy Wishman. And then you can find my writings at unmistakably.starwars.com and futureoftheforce.com. And I usually will tweet out when I have a piece. I'm not disciplined or intelligent enough to have a regular writing schedule, but I put the word out when I've got something to say.
Very good, very good. You guys can follow me over on Twitter at Mr. Vote Tweets. Make sure to head on over to Instagram. Follow me at The Official Vote. Make sure to subscribe to the Brick City Blockade Podcast Network on iTunes and head on over to brickcityblockade.com for everything happening in a galaxy far, far away. Thank you guys for listening to Talking Star Wars with this special episode with Amy Wishman. Nalan, thank you so much for coming on, Amy.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
And may the Force be with you. Always.